administration has The current administration has $6 to $7 trillion a year of expenses and $4 trillion of revenues. So they have a deficit of $2 to $3 trillion a year, and the debt is skyrocketing. So they don't have agency. And, there's all sorts of questions about how exactly they get their orders and how it works. But, they are functioning in a world where they don't have control. And it's clear that the president is basically doing what he's told. And the question is, who's telling him and how does that message get delivered? So you kind of had this show in front where a group of people look and act like they're running things, but it looks discombobulated because they're constantly saying one thing and doing another and whatever. And then behind it, you have a group of people who, in my experience, are pretty competent and are making it clear, this is how we're going to go. And some people refer to that as deep state. I usually refer to that as the central bankers. The system wants to implement a control grid, and it can't do it without cutting off the leakage. And I suspect that's a big part of what is happening is about. The U.S. government spends, for many decades now, $500 billion to $1 trillion a year. So our military budget is $1 trillion a year. If you're running a global reserve currency, there's one thing you must do if you're the military. And that is you must keep the sea lanes open and you must control the sea lanes. We shut down the Straits of Hormuz. Initially, it was the City of London that shut it down. It was Lloyd's. Lloyd's pulled the insurance. Okay, so the city shut down the Straits, not the Iranians, right? And now you have $1 trillion a year military saying that they're helpless to keep the Straits open. Do you believe that? So the Iranians have been under severe sanctions for decades. And what we're saying is a country of 92 million with a tiny military budget under severe sanctions controls the Straits, and the American empire with $1 trillion a year is helpless to do it. But let's look at the global chessboard. The Americans tried to put on tariffs for everybody. The Supreme Court has said, no, you can't do that. But there's another way to put everybody over the barrel. Remember, the Americans have worked very hard to make sure they're energy self-sufficient, and they have stockpiles of a lot of things they need, okay? They just put the world into energy collapse and famine conditions, by doing this. So now they got everybody over a barrel. And they're relatively, it's what one of the economic spokesperson for the White House, he said, American economy is going to be fine. He said the consumer is going to be hurt, but the economy will be fine because, in fact, the billionaires should be fine. Because what you're talking about doing is creating the conditions for massive consolidation upwards. I mean, you can shut down every small business and small farm in the world and consolidate upward because if you've got the reserve currency, and you can do what you did during COVID. We bankrupted or shut down 35% of the small business and God knows how many of the small farms. And the publicly traded Wall Street firms had a field day. They made a fortune, right? So it was successful. And if you think that's successful, where do you see this? Because for the last year, the administration has cut down massive amounts of, there are all these different programs to provide funding for the food insecure, both domestically and internationally. They've canceled, I think, most, if not all of that. I mean, now you're talking about serious famine conditions globally if this continues. Because if you look at the ingredients coming through for the fertilizer plants, including in Europe, and then look at everything we've done in Europe to shut down the small farmer. I mean, you are creating the conditions of famine. It's criminal. Programmable money and food are two sides of one coin. If everybody can grow food and eat and they have food and energy, they can make community currencies. They don't need my money. I got to control the energy and the food if I'm going to get programmable money, if I'm going to put everybody in the digital concentration camp. We are very close and they are moving very fast. So it's scary. And it's interesting because we were working with different states to legislate programmable money. And our challenge was literally the legislators couldn't fathom that this was a possibility. The market is issuing this stuff at record speed. And if I'm building a 1,000-mile highway and I've got 200 miles now, you put up the guardrails now because people are getting killed now. So you can't wait. And especially because what we're talking about are fundamental constitutional or basic law rights. I mean, if you look at basic human rights in Europe or the United States, we're just talking about putting guardrails that protect those things. And that doesn't stop any financial innovation. It just stops the digital control grid. Remember, every stable coin is going to be programmable. And so it gives you complete surveillance of all the citizens globally if it works. And you can start to fiddle and control them. So what you're going to watch is the U.S. government, so it's going to be the big banks are going to be in the lead on this, and a variety of crypto firms use the crypto rails to tender for as many citizens as they can reach through the smartphones and the internet as possible and get them off their local currency and out of their local banking system and into the treasury market through using the equivalent of a little crypto treasury bill to trade, right? Because if I'm putting money in my local bank in Estonia, the bank's making loans and facilitating with credit creation, building the monetary supply. It's through that credit creation that you create. And if you've ever studied Richard Warner's book, he explains how really good local banks, through their credit creation of, properly underwritten companies, creates massive growth without inflation. And instead, what you're going to do is you're going to suck all the money out of that and into financing the war machine. What a great idea. Now, we don't know if this is going to succeed or fail, but if it succeeds from the point of view of the Secretary of Treasury, it's going to decimate the tax base everywhere in the world that it works. You're talking about a mammoth shift into centralization, because instead of my money going into the local bank and circulating in my community, it's going to Washington where they control who gets it. More billionaires. We'll create a lot more billionaires. Now, Wall Street has said we're going to issue tokens. So instead of trading $250 trillion worth of stocks and bonds globally through the current mechanisms, we're going to create a token for all the stocks and bonds and then trade it through the crypto rails. And depending on what happens and how it happens, essentially all of that trading can be without all the restrictions and laws and conditions that protect you from financial fraud over here in the traditional way to trade it. So we're going to trade 24/7 with low transaction fees, and it's going to be the Wild West. Anything goes. And it's very unclear operationally exactly how this is going to work. So you talk to a money manager in the traditional financial system and they're like, I have no idea how this is going to work. Because it's not clear what the legal connection between a token on a share of IBM stock and the IBM stock, And the other thing that they want to tokenize all real assets. So they want to tokenize the national parks and sell tokens so that you can own a piece of the national park. It's a way of privatizing all the land and resources in the world. It is a vision of how you get to the financial control grid. The leadership are paid in every country in the world to sell their local population down the river. And that's what's been happening for decades. And if you think it's bad in Europe, you should see what went on in Latin America starting in, the late 90s. It was incredible. And I'll give you a perfect example because I just drove to Switzerland and back through Germany. And every time I do a round trip through Germany, it's worse. And van der Leyen said, it was a mistake to cancel nuclear power. It's like, really, you think? It's totally insane. It's suicide. And Volkswagen just announced they're going to be making, I think, missiles because they can't make it as a car company. I mean, energy has destroyed its industrial base. It's suicide. And one of the people from Germany in the European Parliament describing how many jobs and businesses have been lost. Basically, it's building central control and it's building depopulation. So, you're talking about lowering the population, putting the lowered population under complete control, and centralizing political and economic power. So it's a re-engineering, it's a reset. I think we can build the world we want to live in. I'm a great believer that this effort for complete central control will fail, but you can't wait for it to fail to have plan B. Part of the problem, the reason I left the establishment in '98, was I said, this group of people does not have a culture that can handle advanced technology. It's demonic culture. Imagine if we got in a time machine and went back to the Neanderthal age and we gave the Neanderthals laser guns. What would happen? That's what this feels like. Because if you look at the new technology, which is here and what's coming, it's powerful beyond imagination what technology can do for us. But you're putting it in the hands of Neanderthals. Anyway, so I don't know if you've seen any of these videos of the leadership saying that they're going to live forever. So one of my favorite videos is Jared Kushner, after he left the first administration, saying, I'm going to be the first generation to either live forever or to the last generation not to live forever. So he said, I'm taking care of myself. I'm going to the gym. Or Sean Parker saying, I'm a billionaire, so I'm going to live till I'm 145, and you're not. And you're not going to like that. But if you look at what's going on in life sciences, it's fantastic. And if we had an advanced civilization, it could be used very well. So part of this is all these technologies are just tools. And the question is, where's the culture that can manage them in a healthy way? So if you look at who's building the digital control grid, do you know who it is? It's us. We're going to work every day and building it. And if you look at our investments, we're all financing it and we're banking with the banks that are doing it and we're supporting the companies that are doing it. So our theory on how you build a wonderful world, because I liken the centralizers to a tapeworm. And so if you have a tapeworm, you know what you have to do. You have to detox it. And that makes you more powerful and the tapeworm weaker. That's a step forward. And that gives you the energy and the resources you need to start to build the kind of world we want to live in. So what I'm telling people is, if you're going to walk up down, first get rid of the credit card. Or you don't have to get rid of it because I need a credit card to travel. Just dramatically lower how much you use it. Cut the flow of profits into the tapeworm.